Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your sanctimoniously notorious Robert Meyer Burnett, and I am here once again with Robservations, the show about something, although I seem to be playing things twice, which I don't understand. But hey, it's a great, great day today, and do you know why it's a great, great day today? I will tell you why it's a great, great day today. Today is the 42nd anniversary of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. One of my favorite things in the world. So, as your viceroy of verisimilitude, your master of fun and wonder, your existential Mr. Rogers, your, let's say your sci-fi sommelier, I am here to tell you that one of my favorite things in the world turns 42, which is a monumental day. It is a great day, comrades, for we sail into history. Perhaps it's not the kind of day that it was for the 30th anniversary of the Hunt for Red October, which happened just a little while ago. But it's even better. It's even better because it's the 42nd anniversary of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And any of you imagination connoisseurs, if you know what that means, this is a staggering moment. A staggering moment, ladies and gentlemen. A staggering moment in the history of sci-fi fandom. And it is something that, as I can put my headphones back on, it is just a stunning achievement for this wonderful franchise. Why, you may ask? Why is it a stunning achievement? Well, for anybody who is a fan of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, you know that the number 42 is the answer to life, the universe, and everything. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, the answer to it all. The meaning of life, the universe, and everything is 42. And today is actually the real 42nd anniversary of the very first broadcast of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy radio show. It was a radio show first, then it became a trilogy of 5 books. I know, right? And then, well, over the course of time, it became a trilogy of 5 books. Then it became a TV series. And then it became a movie. Now they're saying they're going to turn it back into another TV series. But be that as it may, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy remains one of my very favorite things in all of the world. That is right. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you when I first heard it. I've told this story before. Back in the day, when I think I was either 12 or 13 years old when I probably heard The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy for the first time, probably 13. I was working at Dennis McCurdy and Cynthia Von Sewer's Framers Studio. It was a frame shop on Mercer Island, Washington, my hometown. And I worked there. I had a part-time job framing pictures. That's right, I was cutting glass and cutting molding. And basically, they were Cynthia was the mother of Jolie Von Sewer, she was like my sister growing up. She was amazing. And we were we were like peas in a pod. They were like my second family. My dad used to call Cynthia Mrs. Robinson. That was a Graduate reference, which I thought was fairly amusing. It never ceased to make me laugh, and I used to tell Cynthia that as well. But at the time, so I had this job, I was a fanatic about radio shows, particularly one radio show. I listened to the CBS Radio Mystery Theater Presents, and I listened to it every night. And it was hosted by E.G. Marshall. And what was really cool about it was on a 10:07. And it was on, I think it was on an AM station. It was like KFI. It wasn't KFI. It was something like that. I don't remember. Local Seattle station. I love, because, storytelling. It was kind of like Twilight Zone. And what was interesting about the CBS Radio Mystery Theater is because it was CBS, they had access to the entire Twilight Zone music library. So The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was it was, as I say, the CBS Radio Mystery Theater was scored with all of the Twilight Zone music. And maybe that was part of the appeal. But I loved it. And there was actors I recognized. But it made me love radio drama. And that's why also on public radio they had done the Star Wars. They had adapted Star Wars. Brian Daley had adapted Star Wars for radio, and I was really into that. I didn't know much about old-time radio dramas because there was no way to get them. Obviously, the internet wasn't there, and unless you found places that played them. But I was totally into that. And then The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy came on. Now, I want to say, if it debuted in 78, this had to have been a couple years later that it finally reached American shores. I don't know the exact history behind it. I'm not really sure of all of that history, but it was definitely, it was definitely a big deal. And when I first heard it, it starts out with a piece of music, The Journey of the Sorcerer, that was actually from an Eagles record, One of These Nights, which I didn't know. And it was this like banjo theme, but it was just burned into your brain. And of course, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was the brainchild of one Douglas Adams, who was a British humorist and writer. And let me read a quick article for you guys. If you don't know, there might be some of you who don't know what The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy even is. And I found this article. This was from The Economist, believe it or not. This article is from The Economist, and it was published today. And I figured I'd read it. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy turns 42. Every year, the world celebrates the anniversaries of masterworks and maestros. In 2020, there will be a host of events and publications commemorating the lives of Beethoven, Raphael, Charles Dickens, Anne Bronte, and William Wordsworth. Such milestones usually come in neat multiples of 50. The 42nd anniversary of anything is rarely observed. Yet, on March 8th, fans of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy will pay tribute to the comedy science fiction series, which had its radio premiere on that day in 1978 and was subsequently adapted into novels, television shows, video games, and a film. To mark the occasion, Pan Macmillan has reprinted the scripts and novels in colorful new editions. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was the first book published under their Pan original imprint to sell more than 1 million copies. The British Library will host a day of celebrations, conversation, and performance. BBC Radio 4 has aired the original episodes. Radio 4 Extra will put on a 5-hour Hitchhiker's Guide spectacular, including archival material and specially commissioned programs. Such is the enduring interest in Douglas Adams' story that it is due to be adapted into a new television series by Hulu, a streaming service. The number 42 is the tale's signature joke. It is the response that deep thought, a supercomputer, has taken millions of years to deliver to a race of hyper-intelligent pan-dimensional beings who seek the answers to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. In a risque throwaway gag typical of Adams, the name Deep Thought evokes a notorious pornographic film of 1972. Later, it inspired IBM's chess computers, including the Grandmaster vanquishing Deep Blue. When the machine unveils its nonsensical answer, the hyper-intelligent beings are livid. What they really want to know, Deep Thought muses, is the wording of the ultimate question itself. And it turns out the planet Earth is a very complicated simulation designed to reveal that question, with the hyper-intelligent beings secretly keeping tabs on it while disguised as mice. Unfortunately, a tribe of hideous aliens, the Vogons, of course, blow the planet up 5 minutes before the simulation is due to finish. The series' protagonist is Arthur Dent, a denizen of a small West Country town who narrowly escapes the Earth's destruction and is fated to wander the universe bewildered in a dressing gown as improbable events take place around him. This droll application of the quotidian to the wonders of the universe is at the heart of Adams' appeal. He strips away sci-fi's more portentous attributes without depriving it of either its sweep or its potential profundity. He is often so deliciously funny that readers may find themselves dwelling on the insights he has offered only when they close the book. The total perspective vortex, the notional machine designed to extrapolate the enormity of life, the universe, and everything from a single mundane but agreeable object, a slice of fairy cake, serves as a metaphor for his own work. If Adams' themes are universal, his reach has proved almost as wide. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy has sold more than 14 million copies worldwide and has been translated into dozens of languages, including Korean, Hebrew, and Japanese, apt for a series which gave Babelfish, an early online translation site, its name. Your correspondent was fascinated by the English original as a teenager in Nairobi in the 1980s. Every year, May 25th is observed by Adams fans across the globe as Towel Day, named for the most massively useful thing an interstellar hitchhiker can have. On Towel Day in 2013, Norway's Columbus Public Transport Company gave away towels which allowed passengers to ride for free. 2 years later, Samantha Cristoforetti, an Italian astronaut, delivered a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reading from the International Space Station. Elon Musk, the boss of Tesla, has described Adams as his favorite philosopher. What Adams was essentially saying, Mr. Musk has said, is the universe is the answer. What are the questions? A lot of times the question is harder than the answer. Adams was an imperfect writer. His plotting was lax, partly a result of a notorious procrastination habit which required him to rush at the last moment, but which helped make him an imaginative improviser. I love deadlines, he wrote. I like the whooshing sound they make as they fly by. His female characters are flimsy, but he excelled at bringing a human scale and sensibility to the vastness of the cosmos, and vice versa, often via a deftly executed one-liner. God, in the world of Arthur Dent, has only one message for his creations. We apologize for the inconvenience. This wry approach to serious subjects is now a recognizable idiom in science fiction. His late rival, Terry Pratchett, might not have cared to acknowledge it, but Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy opened up the door for Pratchett's Discworld. The success of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was a wonderful unintended consequence for a writer who treated unintended consequences as the stuff of both life and literature. I may not have gone where I intended to go, Adams wrote, but I think I've ended up where I needed to be. I can't tell you how much I adore The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I've talked a lot about one of my favorite scenes in any science fiction anywhere was when Zaphod Beeblebrox, the president of the galaxy that's being pursued by a number of interests, he goes in, he's thrown into the total perspective vortex. And the total perspective vortex, what it does is you are forced as a sentient thinking being to see yourself in relation to the rest of the universe, and just how small you really are. The soul-crushing emptiness of the cosmos. That's why I love that Swedish film Meyer so much, because it is like being in the total perspective vortex by the time you get to the end. But what's very funny is Zaphod Beeblebrox comes out of the total perspective vortex, and the guard says, "You've been into the vortex?" And he's like, "Yep." And you've seen yourself in relation to the rest of the universe? And Zaphod's like, "I have, yes." "And what did you discover?" Zaphod says that I'm a really great guy. "Didn't I tell you? I'm Zaphod Beeblebrox." And I love that. Even confronted with the infinitude of the universe that is supposed to crush any thinking being, crush their soul, doesn't affect Zaphod. And I always love that. And of course, we have Marvin the Paranoid Android. There's Arthur Dent and his friend Ford Prefect. If you don't know The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I tell you, the best way to begin is with the radio show. There are various iterations of it. There was other radio shows over the course of the the Hitchhiker's Guide's life, but the radio show really deals with what later became the first two books, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and of course The Restaurant at the End of the Universe. And the books are great too. I think the books were an example of sort of diminishing returns, but I think that the radio show is still my favorite thing. It's one of my favorite things ever. Like I can't tell you how much I love, and I am not one of these people that embraces comedy in science fiction. Like, I get it. I Futurama, I get it. Red Dwarf remains a blind spot in my sci-fi fandom. I know there's people out there going, "What? Smeg?" Yeah, I'm not up on my Red Dwarf, even though somebody brings it up every year at Starship Smackdown. You'd think after almost 2 decades of doing it, I would sit down and Red Dwarf endures. It keeps going. They keep bringing it back. I understand. But to me, the granddaddy of all science fiction comedy, and there was science fiction comedy before Hitchhiker's Guide. I don't mean to disparage anyone who might have other sci-fi funnies that they like more, but there was just something about, maybe it was because Arthur Dent, this everyman who you see the story through his eyes, appealed to me. I don't know. But one of the great things about the radio series, I mean, I was never somebody who was even that into Monty Python. I've kind of gotten into Monty Python later in life because people people I've met over the course of my life have got me into Monty Python. But I had seen I'd seen Life of Brian and Jabberwocky and Meaning of Life and those things, but I didn't internalize them the way I internalized other things. There are comedies, of course, I do love, but to me, Spinal Tap is sort of a cousin of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in sort of a weird way. I mean, I know that doesn't make much sense, but I've always loved Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's just so funny, and it could have been at the time that I heard it too. It had such an impact on me. I listened to it over and over and over and over again. I actually had to record it on cassette tape back in the day, and I religiously recorded, but I listened to it at work as I was framing pictures and cutting glass and cutting molding and cutting mat board. I listened to the Hitchhiker's Guide when it aired on the weekends, and I dearly loved it. So I would be remiss if I did not celebrate today, being that it is 42 is such a significant number in the life of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and that it is, in fact, 42 is the number of the day. There's another genre. I don't know if you'd call it a milestone, but something else is happening today. International Women's Day is happening today. And if you're a Deadpool fan, you know how Deadpool and Vanessa celebrate International Women's Day. Let's just say that Vanessa straps on International Women's Day and takes Wade where he wants to go, if you know what I'm saying. Yes, and of course, in the first Deadpool, that was a joke they made that I couldn't believe they made in a comic book movie, but I'll take it. So yes, it is International Women's Day, so to all you women out there, I salute you, and to all you people who identify as women out there, I salute you, and I think we should all take stock of the women in our lives, think about who they are, whether they are significant others, whether they are our children, whether they are our parents. Women make the world go round, they always have, so let's celebrate all women everywhere, their achievements, their lives, however you want to do it. And if you want to do it like Wade and Veronica do it, or Wade and Vanessa do it, that's pretty good too. Anyway, so that's what I wanted to say about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I mean, what do you guys think about it? Do you like Hitchhiker's Guide? One of the things about Hitchhiker's Guide that I was really excited for the movie. And when I first saw the designs of Marvin the Paranoid Android and the fact that Alan Rickman was going to play him, or at least do his voice, I was very excited. For whatever reason, I found that The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I think, is really difficult to translate into, I guess, and this might be my bias because the way I heard it the first time, it was conjuring all these images up in my mind. And once you see Marvin the Paranoid Android, obviously the BBC series, the TV series, a lot of people remember it fondly, but they didn't quite have the production values. I mean, it was interesting how they portrayed the Hitchhiker. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is a book. It's a reference book. Actually, it's I guess it's a reference pad. I guess it would be like an iPad now, but it is a reference book. So they constantly jump in and out. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, for those of you who don't know, it has a voice, and the narrator who would narrate would do the voice of the book, and you'd see designs and pictures and all that. So to actually realize that on screen and to jump in and out, it's very odd, because once you jump into the book and you see definitions of things, and it gets it's hard to do, and I don't think it's ever been entirely done successfully, either on screen or in the original series. The original British TV series suffered, I guess for me, it suffers from, it doesn't have a lot of verisimilitude, because like many BBC shows, the interiors were shot on videotape. So it looks like a soap opera, that look. And then when they would go on location, they would shoot in 16 millimeter and intercut the two. So it had that, it's like a Doctor Who episode. The Doctor Who was done kind of the same way. And I always found it a little jarring for the original series. the TV series, and then the movie. The absurd concepts in it are, I think, difficult to do. Listening to them, it makes more sense than actually seeing them, and it's like, for me at least, when I first saw the TV show, a lot of these things were brought down to earth, because the concepts, even though it's a comedy, the concepts about the scale of the universe and all these things, they did a pretty good job of conveying that. And then I always felt that when you saw these actual things brought to life, that it diminished them all somehow. And I don't know if there's a way to do that correctly. I think it's tough, because when you're actually following the plot and you descend into the actual story that's being told, it sort of removes some of the fun from it. Or at least it did for me. I still go back to the radio show, and then I did like the books. But the radio show for me was the end. And of course they did other versions over the years, but on radio even, but nothing matched the beginnings or the first time you saw or heard Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I was just huge fan of Hitchhiker's Guide. What do you guys think? Do you think? A lot of people might not. I don't know. If you don't like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I can understand that. It's British humor. It's not necessarily for everyone, and I get that. I mean, you don't have to love everything. But I do think, and I wonder if you haven't heard it, does it hold up now? I mean, obviously the humor came out of the late 70s, and with everything that's come after that, I don't know. I don't know if does it work still. I'd be very curious, because I don't know the answer. Perhaps it doesn't. But anyway, let's see what you have to say today. Uh-oh, my mouse needs to be turned back on. Speaking of International Women's Day, Willow says, Happy International Women's Day. Hope that you have a great time celebrating it, a la Deadpool. Now, Willow, why am I not surprised that you were to come up with that? It would have been you or Vesna or Paula, but I appreciate it that it came from you. Have you ever celebrated International Women's Day like that with somebody? Or have you ever celebrated not on International Women's Day? Either way, you don't have to have a holiday to celebrate like that, let me tell you. Sam Whiskey sent in a super chat. Star Trek The Motion Picture is a copy of Space 1999's Voyager's Return episode. You know, I've heard that before. I don't necessarily think that's totally true, because it's similar, but that story, Robots Return, was actually originally written for, I don't know if it was Planet Earth or Genesis 2. It was originally written by Gene Roddenberry as a pilot or an episode of one of his shows, way before the Space 1999 episode aired. So, it's just a case of that similar idea. But, I don't think the idea of when you throw something out, that story is really the message in a bottle story. You throw out a message in the bottle out into the ocean, and who finds it? So I think that the essence of that story is that it's that somebody threw a message in a bottle, and it is found and answered. So I don't think necessarily that it was ever a ripoff. Stubble McShave says, Rob, don't forget your towel. I tried to send it in a super chat, but apparently it seems like the sentence, Rob, don't forget your towel, contains some horrible vulgarity and couldn't be sent as a super chat. Is that true? Really? Don't forget your towel? Maybe that has something to do with, I guess you're supposed to wrap it around yourself to not expose your private parts to unwitting eyes or something like that. Suthius, haven't seen you in a while, Suthius. Suthius sent in a super chat and said, hey, Mr. B, 60s in Virginia today, windows down as I'm driving, taking my trash to the local recycling center while listening to you. Started Hunters, digging it so far. Hunters is the new Amazon series where Al Pacino plays a Nazi hunter. Apparently it's quite delicious. I've heard a lot of great things about it. I've heard it didn't quite stick the landing, but it's definitely something I would be interested in watching, and I'll get around to it. Look, I love anything where Nazis are bad. There's lots of, I mean, is any villain better than Nazis? They're like the greatest villains of all time, because there's nothing redeemable. They're pure evil. Pure evil. Stubble McShave says, one of the best sentences in literature. The ships hung in the sky in much the same way that bricks don't. Are you talking about the Vogon constructor fleet at the beginning? Look, there's so much great writing in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I can't even begin to tell you how great it is. Sam also Sam Whiskey sends in a super chat and says, Hitchhikers was the internet before the internet. Well, he did. Douglas Adams was pretty prophetic in terms of what he came up with. And there's a lot of really forward-thinking stuff in that book. And I think that's what makes it so delightful. I really do. And I can't tell you how much I love it. Makes me want to go, somewhere in the Robservatory, I have my CDs of the radio show, and it makes me want to listen to it again. Maybe they're put up somewhere, but who knows? I'm going to read a quick little letter. This is from Curtis Joseph. Hello, Mr. Burnett. Hollywood has reached an embarrassing state of creative stagnation. Let me explain. There's a dearth of fresh new films, especially when it comes to tentpole properties appearing on the big screens. The ever-constant hive mind in Hollywood keeps churning out reboots, remakes, and adding sequels upon sequels to old properties that frankly don't need continuations. Just freshly revealed yesterday, news that there will not be a fourth installment to the Back to the Future franchise. This brilliant news is a resounding sigh of relief to fans of it worldwide, and no doubt Bob Gale has absolutely made it known that there will never be reboots nor sequels in the future. Sir, the bubble has burst in La La Land for quite some time, at least as for when it comes to sincerely going forward into inventive, engaging tentpole properties, but you already knew this, so I digress. I see it now. We're in for a fleetingly small pocket of excellent moments to come through films from Christopher Nolan, Colin Trevorrow, Catherine Bigelow, James Cameron, J.A. Bayona, Greta Gerwig, Patty Jenkins, and hopefully at a future time in her career, Deborah Chow. I know, of course, that there are others who are going to rise to excellence, so I am certainly not leaving them out of this important dialogue. What are your thoughts on this? Live life to the fullest, Curtis M. Joseph. What are my thoughts on this? Well, I suppose I should, go full screen for this one. My thoughts. Well, first of all, as everybody knows, movies are very expensive to make, and the studios are not necessarily in the business of anymore of making, say, mid-level adult fare. Like, for instance, as much as we love The Hunt for Red October, which came out 30 years ago. I can't believe it came out 30 years ago, but it did. As much as we love The Hunt for Red October, the studios are not going to be making those kinds of movies anymore because it's an adult-minded, intelligent political thriller, even though I still think there's so much suspense in it. There's so many great characters. It's truly an ensemble film, even though of course, Alec Baldwin plays the first incarnation of Jack Ryan, and he does it very, very well. But there's so many great actors in that. I mean, Fred Dalton Thompson, James Earl Jones, Scott Glenn, Stellan Skarsgård. It's just full of great actors. And it's obviously an adaptation of Tom Clancy's book. And I think that nowadays it's really difficult. Who's your audience? I know we're the audience. Like, the audience for these movies is, well, if they're good, people will go see them. But the problem is, Hunt for Red October, if you were to make that today, it would probably cost between $150 and $200 million. And I don't think you could justify that kind of expense, because movie-going in the past 30 years, I mean, I think about it, 30 years, my God, 30 years, that's more than half my life ago. And when I think about that, movie-going it's just changed. everything has changed. People aren't going to the movies for that kind of thing. I think it would be turned into probably, well, Jack Ryan is now a TV series. We've seen 2 seasons of Jack Ryan. They would have done Hunt for Red October as, I think, a show. Apropos of nothing, I saw the full trailer for Ozark Season 3. Elizabeth turned me on to Ozark. We are very excited that it comes out on March 25th, I think. Very excited to see Ozark Season 3. But I think that at the studio level, the reason you're seeing remakes and the reason movies like Sonic the Hedgehog get made is because they have to mitigate their risks by having name brand recognition. It's an old story, but it's unfortunate that we're not getting a lot of... I mean, the studios basically are out of the business of making between, say, 50 million and... Well, now let's go up to 100 million. Between 50 and 100 million adult-oriented fare, like things like the Jack Ryan movies. They just aren't doing that anymore because those are now being done as series, those kinds of movies. I mean, look, I hope one day that somebody does Red Storm Rising. I really liked Red Storm Rising, which was basically about the outbreak of World War III. Even that, no one's going to fight, I think, a hot nuclear war. It would all be asymmetric warfare, and you disrupt the internet and ruin an economy. I mean, look at what a viral outbreak can do to the world economy and to the stock market, and most people on the planet are not even affected by it yet. But the world that we live in it's just changed. Now, I see it as something. I see the glass as half full because we're getting so much great programming. Would I have liked an Umbrella Academy movie? Sure, but I do think that the series was probably way better than the movie that we would get. Of course, they're now advertising the New Mutants everywhere. I hope it's good. I really want the New Mutants to be great. But I think that we're living through a golden age of entertainment. There's so much great stuff being produced. Look, in the theaters, you have to have for the major studios. That's why we're getting the fast F9, the Fast Saga. Who would have thought there would have been 10 Fast and Furious movies if you include Hobbs and Shaw? There will be 11 if they indeed go all the way to 10 and decide to end the saga there. Who would have thought that would have even happened? Who would have thought that Han would have died in Fast and Furious 3, Tokyo Drift, or as I like to say, The Drift, and yet he's going to be in Fast and Furious 9? Who would have thought that would have happened? Who would have thought that Sam Neill and Laura Dern are coming back for the 3rd Jurassic World movie? But here we are. And I think also there is hope. I do think Blumhouse, Jason Blum, has been providing interesting genre entertainment theatrically for low money. I mean, we've talked about Lee Wanell on this show and the fact that Invisible Man is knocking it out of the park. Just out of curiosity, I'm very curious to see where, in fact, we are at right now. I'm going to plug my mouse back in to charge up. Where are we? Where are we at in terms of box office as of right now for the Invisible Man? It'll be interesting to see. Let me call it up here, because don't you want to know as of today or as of right now? So and this is an indicator. I mean, I think, to me, when I look at what I would love to do, so Onward made $11 million. That's the daily, that apparently for Sunday. But let's look at the Onward's going to take $40 million for the weekend. The Invisible Man is going to take 15. So the Invisible Man worldwide, wow. We're at $98 million on a $7 million spend. On a $7 million spend, and if you go by conventional wisdom, you multiply the gross. You have to whatever your movie cost, you have to times that by 3. So you're at $21 million to break even. Now with marketing these days, I'm sure it's even more on a smaller movie. So let's just go up to 30. Let's say the movie costs $7, they spent $22 million on P&A, prints and advertising, or whatever. So we're at $30 million. It's going to cross the $100 million threshold. That's $70 million profit. I mean, even if you add $20 million for studio overhead or whatever creative accounting you get, that's a $50 million profit on a $7 million spend. That's amazing. Now, why the studios aren't thinking more along the lines of like that, I get it. I get it, because they're like, okay, a $50 million profit is good. First of all, we can't guarantee that with every $7 million movie is going to make that kind of money, and nor will it be a zeitgeist movie, which I totally understand. I completely get that. But the fact that most of the studios, I mean, Blumhouse is taking care of that, and then they distribute through Universal. I would think that every studio would want to have a Jason Blum and Blumhouse, and I'm surprised that they don't. I mean, as many people know, it's very funny. I recently finished producing some special features for a previous project that I worked on that has yet to be announced. But as I was going through all this material, I was just, it made me wonder, because we were working at a different studio and they were doing just that. They were making movies for around the $4 million range. They were direct to video, yes, but they decided to get rid of that whole department because, I've talked about that before on this show, they got rid of the whole department because why, if you make a movie that costs $4 million and you make 20 or 25 million, the profit, why even bother when we can make a $100 million movie that'll potentially make $1 billion at the worldwide box office? And I'm like, look, having a catalog of films is always a good thing, and cultivating new talent. You can, for a $4 million spend, which is what we did, making a film that you can exploit over many different platforms, you'll get your money back. It's worth doing, and it's also worth cultivating new talent, because where are you going to be in 20 years? I mean, not to be morbid or anything, but some of our great filmmakers are not going to be working today. That are working today are not going to be working in 20 years. Clint Eastwood, Martin Scorsese, Ridley Scott. These are filmmakers that just, you're locked into the human lifespan. And unless we're cultivating new filmmakers and giving them the ability to develop their own careers through their own work, the problem is when studios then are dictating, like, here, make this script, or we have to do this, or we have to do that. What you're going to do is you're not going to allow people to develop their own cinematic voices. And what are we going to do in the future? Where are the studios going to be in 5 or 10 or 20 years? What are they going to be releasing? Who's going to be making these movies? So I think it's really important. I think there should be initiatives, and now with streaming services, we might be able to see more young talent, or more talent that has been sitting around doing nothing, sitting idly by. I mean, I have a very talented friend named Michael Davis, who is, I think, a wonderful talent, and he hasn't made a feature since Shoot 'Em Up, although he's been working on something that I don't want to talk about, but man, it's incredible. And when you see it, Michael Davis has not been sitting idly by. He's made something that I find to be quite astonishing, and not just in how he made it, but what it's about. And he's been pioneering kind of, I guess, a new production pipeline, and it's pretty amazing. And I would think to myself that he should be having a platform. I mean, he discovered Kerry Russell with his film 8 Days a Week. And, of course, he made 100 Girls and 100 Women. He made the horror movie Monster Man for Lionsgate. And then, of course, he made Shoot 'Em Up, which has now become a beloved movie. I can't wait for you to see what his new project is, because it's quite astonishing. I hope he will come on this show and we'll be able to delve into it. But I don't want to steal his thunder and talk about what that is before he's ready. But I think that there's a lot of filmmakers out there that are being underutilized. And that model, the Blumhouse model, is I think every studio should have it. There should be whole production pipelines. I mean, I know Jason Blum would say that he shouldn't have made the movie, but he made Whiplash. And I know he said it makes no money, but it did win J.K. Simmons an Academy Award, and it's a wonderful movie. And Blumhouse made it. I want to see more of those kinds of films. But even Whiplash, nobody went to see it in the theater. And that was kind of a bummer. But anyway, Curtis, I want to thank you for your letter. That's very cool. Just Plain Steve sent in a super chat and says, so I'm certain you've discussed it at length. But my job has kept me from watching your show live, and playing catch-up is difficult. Just wanted to know your quick thoughts on Picard before I jump in. Well, Just Plain Steve, yes, I've done many episodes about Picard. I was talking about it just yesterday. I think that Picard is, especially in I'm just going to give you my quick overall impressions. I think, given the state of where television is at now, given the state of the excellence of a lot of what we're getting in terms of scripted programming, especially in the fantasy realm, whether it's The Boys, whether it's Umbrella Academy, whether it's Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance, and any number of the German series Dark. There's so much great scripted programming on. I find Star Trek Picard disappointing, mostly from a writing standpoint. It feels that there are too many cooks working on the show. It feels like there isn't an overarching vision for the show. There's too many different competing ideas that I think don't entirely work. Now, to be fair, there's still 3 more episodes. We're if they stick their landing in Act 3, although I don't think they can. We'll see. But I have been very, very disappointed in Star Trek Picard, as everyone who watches this show knows. I'm still watching it. I'm not going to not watch it. Critical Drinker released a review of The Timeless Children, the final episode of the 12th season of Doctor Who. I think it's the final episode. And I totally agree with him. He actually delves into where our franchises are at, and he gives a very succinct explanation of what is wrong with a lot of the franchises that he uses Star Trek, Star Wars, and Doctor Who as examples, and I really do think he nails it. He nails it. I don't want to... You should watch it. You should watch the Critical Drinker's review. I mean, of course, he still does his style, his snarky style, but I really think he did a pretty great job and nails it. So I'm not a fan of the show. But every week I tune in hoping it'll be better. There's a lot of I have to say I loved seeing Jonathan Frakes and Marina Sirtis come back. And they were both great in their roles, and I loved the actress who plays Kestra, their daughter. But it seemed like literally in the middle of this show, in the middle of Picard, after everything that was going on, I really felt that the producers, they have said that by episode 7, they had to sort of regroup and figure out where they were going. It felt like I was seeing the sliver of an entirely different show. And while we see Deanna Troi and we do see Riker, I felt like this is how they've... Again, why in Generations, why do we always have to go back to a house? Like, every Starfleet officer retires to a 20th century house in the woods somewhere. I mean, I would think that if they're spacefaring people, what's with retirement? This idea of retiring and watching... Literally, they spent time... Riker was cooking pizza in a pizza oven. And there's a whole contingent of fandom that loves that. Oh, isn't that so great? I don't think it is great. In the middle of the narrative that they're telling, really? You're gonna take an episode. As much as I like the nostalgia factor, and I think Marina Sirtis was terrific, she was really great in her role, you're gonna stop and literally, in the middle of this dire storyline where all kinds of hell is about to break loose, we're going to stop and we're going to stop and have what? We're going to stop and have pizza? Why? It's very weird. Very, very, very odd. But okay, that's what they're doing. But yes, if you've watched the show, you've heard me go off on this. Journey's End sends in a super chat and says, is Brian Fuller under an NDA? Will we ever get his full side of what happened when he ran Discovery? I want to know about the conversations between him and Kurtzman. Well, look, he's still listed as a co-creator of Discovery. And I'm sure when he left, I mean, it's just standard practice that you sign a contract that you're not going to disparage the show. He's still getting paid. you know? So it's not something I think he's ever going to talk about, at least not for the time being, not for a while. And there's now his former partners, they were showrunners, they're gone. Michael Chabon is gone as well. He's no longer a showrunner. So the show has had just as much turmoil and turnover as the Next Generation did in its first 2 seasons, and they had to deal with a writer's strike. So I would imagine you probably won't be hearing from Bryan Fuller unless you ever run into him, because he's pretty loquacious. Zachary King sends in a tip and says, the wife and I saw The Invisible Man a few days ago, and as John Campea would say, we had fun with that movie. Given the success of the movie and the ending, do you think we will get a sequel, Invisible Woman? Probably. I think why not? I would actually like to see that. I don't know where it would go, but I think it would be pretty interesting. This idea, one of the things, like Paul Verhoeven's Hollow Man, when Kevin Bacon becomes invisible, his first impulse, it drives him crazy, but then his first impulses were not good. Like, if you couldn't be seen by anyone, it would be interesting. Like how would you deal with life? I wouldn't mind watching a sequel, and I think based on the amount of money the movie's made, maybe you will. But then again, with this kind of with only $7 million they're spending, if you're Lee Whannell, obviously one of the architects of the Saw franchise that hasn't necessarily been shy ever about sequelizing itself, why wouldn't you? Maybe you could use the Invisible series as, again, an incubator for promoting new talent. Who knows? My friend Adam Robitel, who I've known for almost 2 decades, he directed Insidious 4, The Last Key, and that got him off. That was his first, I guess you'd call it a studio movie or a big movie, which led to him directing Escape Room and now Escape Room 2. So maybe they could use the Invisible Woman series or Invisible People, the Invisible Family, however they're going to do that. I think that why not? Absolutely. Because you did, as you said, have fun with that movie. Sam McDonald sent in a super chat and said, with people staying home due to the coronavirus, might this be the tipping point for cinemas? Perhaps it's just more comfortable to stay in. Well, look, I think that there is a very real concern here about how this is going to work. I don't know. I don't want to live in a world where human beings are sequestered away. Look, we've seen that's pretty dystopian. That's pretty post-apocalyptic or post-viral apocalypse. Very, very like The Stand or something. I don't want to live the rest of my life sequestered away in isolation from the rest of humanity. I like going to see movies with groups of people, but if that's where it's going to be, if we can't get a shot, if we can't get inoculated, I think this is really, this disruption it's disruption across the board, and everybody is gonna reel from the effects. The economic effects of this they've just begun to start hitting us. I think it's gonna be rough, man. I'm worried. I am worried about where this is going. I maybe it is just more comfortable to stay in, but I don't. We're social creatures. I hope we don't have to stay in for the rest of our lives, because that would be a bummer. I hope that's not the case. I really do. I don't, and I hope we all can pull this out, because it's kind of a bummer. Let's see. I've got a letter from Jermaine K. Jermaine K says, "Hello, Rob. Thank you for reading my previous letter on Robservations number 348. As I've listened to the concerns and complaints about Star Trek Picard, I think I see where the disconnect is. It seems to many fans, myself included, that the canon of multiple franchises is being disrespected. Some of it is being actively rewritten or discarded entirely, and a lot of fans are upset by this. I'm a bigger Star Wars fan than Star Trek fan, but respect both franchises. The treatment of Star Wars canon aggravates me almost as much as Picard aggravates you. There are things in Rise of Skywalker that totally negate the previous movies, like Rey healing people through the Force. Why didn't Obi-Wan heal Qui-Gon Jinn? Why didn't Luke heal Yoda? Surely Rey didn't discover a Force ability that Obi-Wan Kenobi didn't know how to do. She can't have a deeper connection to the Force than Luke Skywalker, right? Rey being able to heal makes significant characters look bad, and this had led to rejection of her. Star Trek Picard is messing with the canon of two of my favorite Star Trek villains. Sorry, antagonists. The Borg and the Romulans. The idea that anyone can disassemble a cube, yet the collective is nowhere around, seems very out of character for them. I won't even get into the foolishness of the Romulan Star Empire being unable to evacuate their own citizens. These changes are too dramatic for fans not to notice, but it feels like the goal is to rewrite huge chunks of canon. Unfortunately, this reminds me of the many changes and rewrites that the comic book industry has gone through. I say that as a lifelong fan who freely acknowledges past changes that failed. The New 52, Ben Reilly, and the rise of Superman all come to mind. Many fans rejected these changes. Seems like Picard is going down this well-traveled road. Well, I think what we're seeing, look, if you're a creative worth your salt, man, woman, old, young, it doesn't matter. Whether you're a creative, what you want to do is when you're working on something, you want to put your imprimatur on it. You want to put your creative stamp on whatever it is that you're doing. And what I find fascinating about what our creators are doing now is there is this impulse, and I don't necessarily, I guess the Critical Drinker got into this in his review of The Last Doctor Who, but this idea that they're going back into the past and changing these foundational concepts that have been part of these properties for such a long period of time. Like everything you thought you knew was wrong. And I find that strange. I see that, look, when it comes to something like Star Trek, you had Leonard Nimoy playing Spock, and yes, I know, there were other actors that played Spock. There was the voice actor who played Spock on the animated series. There were the actors that played evolving Spock in Star Trek 3. There were other, but for the most part, I think many people would concede that from the original Star Trek pilot, The Cage, which later was shown as The Menagerie, I'm not going to count. I don't like to count The Cage officially because it was never aired and it was a rejected pilot. The way that you can only look at The Cage as canonical is how you look at it in The Menagerie. But Leonard Nimoy played Spock on TV from 1966 all the way up through Star Trek 09. Well, actually, Into Darkness. But so he's the one dude who played Spock. And yet, when you go back on, say, Discovery and try and retcon Spock, give him a learning deficiency, for instance, or make it seem like he's wet behind the ears when he first gets on Discovery. To me, that's changing a character. You're not being true. And I'm not saying you can't, anybody can do whatever they want. But I think part of the what I don't understand the impulse of why do that? Why go back and make these fundamental alterations that then cast everything that came before in a different light? I find it like I don't go to somebody's house and disrupt their feng shui. I don't sit there and go, why don't we let's move your furniture around a little more. I don't like the way the furniture is. I think I can do a better job. Well, really? Is that for you to say? I don't understand why creators feel the need to go back and do that. I mean, I know everyone liked Anson. Anson Mount, why do people want to see a Captain Pike show? Because he's the only character that they've introduced, maybe with the possible exception of Saru, that actually feels like they're on a Star Trek show. I mean, it's like, yeah, I want to see that I want to see that show. And I find that interesting. But yes, they are messing with canon. And if they were more successful at it, nobody would care. But look, in my mind, they're not. I feel that the character of Picard has been rewritten based on other things Patrick Stewart has played. Like, it makes sense that the Picard or the Charles Xavier of Logan, that he had Alzheimer's or his mind, one of the world's great telepaths, because of old age, his mental faculties were going. I mean, that makes sense. That works. I'm like, I'll buy into that. Even in the comics, we've seen crazy shit happen with Charles Xavier, Onslaught being one of those crazy things. But the way that Patrick Stewart is being portrayed now in Picard, while it might feel more realistic and contemporary, it doesn't feel like what the character of Picard in Star Trek would be like as he got older. I don't believe the way he's been written. He's been written to appeal to Patrick Stewart, obviously, but it doesn't feel like the character or the situations. You know, they've made Seven of Nine. They've asked us to believe that Seven of Nine is where she is now as opposed to where we last saw her. And there's a huge progression there that I think a lot of fans are like, well, it's great seeing Seven. We're all susceptible to that. Bring back Riker, bring back Troy, bring back Seven. We're not going to not get the feels when these characters come on the screen. But I just don't feel that. I feel they've been shoehorned into these various roles just because. And I don't like it. I don't like it because I can't buy into it. I'm like, they have not made me believe where these characters are. And I know that a lot of fans will just accept it. I talk to people, I'm like, they're like, well, that's just the way it is, so I'm going to enjoy it on that level. And I'm like, well, I can't because they're calling it Picard. So I know Jean-Luc Picard. I watched 7 seasons of the show. I watched 4 movies. I've interviewed Patrick Stewart for hours at a time. I feel like I know the way the character is supposed to be, and it bothers me when the creators have just made something the way they want it and not given enough. They've not allowed. They haven't taken me to the place I need to go as an astute viewer to buy into what they're telling me. And I think a lot of people feel that way, and I don't understand it. I guess I don't get it. This is a letter from Brian Eng. Oh, I love getting letters from Brian Eng. He's always throwing out these interesting conundrums. Brian Eng says, yesterday, you read a letter from Willow about some animes. She mentioned one that had naked children. That, in combination with that German film you talked about a couple of weeks ago, got me thinking, is hentai pornography? If so, is children in hentai child pornography? If so, then it is highly illegal to own that anime? In the world of that German film, if it's legal to own a sex robot in the form of a child, then surely so is child pornography, right? I mean, how can it be illegal to own naked images of children, yet you can go home and do more than look at a physical manifestation of that? Then again, in our real world, as it is child pornography to take home a Macy's child mannequin and use your art skills to make it more realistic, can some art be considered pornographic? Is a homemade erotic painting pornography? Is it illegal to paint it in the form of a child? Who makes this determination? The government? Is this the slippery slope you're afraid of? The government telling you that your art is illegal? I would love to know your thoughts. Well, look, this is a very interesting subject. And I think that, look, I don't presume to know the Japanese soul because I did not grow up Japanese. I know I'm a huge fan of Japanese science fiction. I'm a huge fan of Japanese comics. And I do find a lot of their practices interesting. I think absolutely hentai is pornographic. I don't think that there's anybody who would deny that. I remember seeing The Wandering Kid going, I think that was the Wandering Kid was probably the first hentai that I ever saw. And then, of course, I think my favorite, could you say that? My favorite is Bible Black. At least of all, I haven't watched a lot of it, but Bible Black was recommended to me and I watched it. I'm like, wow, that's pretty interesting. I don't find it particularly arousing. I find it very interesting. And I've always thought, well, what does all of this mean? You know, and I think it does. There is something primal in all of that. And of course, you know, the Japanese culture, their morality and their practices are just different than ours. And I don't presume to quite understand them because I didn't grow up in that culture. But yeah, I mean, I think that The Trouble with Being Born, the Austrian film that I was talking about that just played at the Berlinale, is very problematic. But I think what's really interesting is obviously that film isn't only about that. That robot the gender of that robot has changed and it's used to replace someone who's been lost, a person that's been lost. So I think these are very compelling questions that science fiction is going to have to answer. All good science fiction is maybe not answered, but contemplated, and we as a society are going to have to answer for that. I mean, it's interesting. I watched a TED talk. You get you read a review or something, and you start getting suggestions for you. And there was a TED talk with a Dutch a psychiatrist who works with the authorities on these kinds of cases, on horrible cases of abuse. And this TED Talk has been pilloried because basically she came out and was saying that, look, this is an affliction. This is a deviancy that needs to be addressed. It needs to be addressed medically, and it needs to be, people need to be cured of it. And she was talking about, in her line of research and her field, and she specializes in this, she can give you a percentage, she can give you an actual number of people in our society that suffer from that kind of affliction. And it's real, and it should be treated. And I think, look, it's a very slippery slope in terms of art. And like I've always said, if people look at the kind of books, if we fell into, you watch The Handmaid's Tale, and The Handmaid's Tale is about that kind of a society. And I think human civilization, it's certainly something that scares me. If one day I'm going to wake up and my Amazon purchasing history is going to be used against me in a court of law, these are the kind of things that you read. Now, most of it is innocuous. I wouldn't be, I don't think that I'm ashamed of anything I know. Yes, or that I own. Even Herman McKink's rocking machine, whether it's a 6-scale one behind me or this one in front of me, because A Clockwork Orange is one of my favorite films, and I could give you a rationale for wanting, like, I thought it was pretty crazy that a Japanese toy company, Medicom, made that full-size replica of Herman McKink's rocking machine. And so I apologize for that. But yeah, I do think the morals, I mean, what does art do? I think a society, first and foremost, to have a working society, you have to protect the human beings, the souls, the individuals, however you want to call it. You have to protect the people that are that make up your society. And I think, honestly, I believe part of that is protecting children. Now, from exploitation and abuse of any kind. Now, I think sometimes children are overprotected. I don't think children should be particularly sheltered from, when I was a kid, I didn't understand my grandmother. I think I was 8 or 9 when my grandmother died, my mom's mom, Flo. And I was very, very close to my grandmother. And nobody told me that she was terminally ill with cancer. We just took this vacation. I think it was in 75. It was the first time, or maybe it was in 76. It was the first time that we came to California, and we did everything. San Diego Zoo, Lion Country Safari. I went to Universal Studios, and I saw Airport 77 being filmed there. I saw the miniature shot of the 747 when you're on with Bruce, the tramway, when the shark jumps out at you. They were actually filming in that water tank. They were filming the miniature 747 hitting the oil derrick that I later saw in Airport 77. But they didn't tell me she was dying. And she passed away, and I knew she was very ill, but I didn't think that she was going to be gone. And my parents didn't let me go to her funeral either. And I think that that was more detrimental to me because I wasn't really able to process that and come to grips with it. But I think ultimately, art, do we constrain our artists? I don't think so. As long as their art doesn't infringe on the rights of any other person, whatever that means. But I think it's tough. I think it's a hard question to answer. And I think that, the trouble with being born and the idea that if we are going to have, look, sentient life, if it's going to be artificially created, we're going to have to deal with the moral and ethical implications of that. And they did on Measure of a Man, synthetic life forms. What is Westworld all about? It's about what happens when the hosts are treated the way they're treated by human beings. And if they're feeling creatures, do the hosts have souls even though they're mechanical? Do they? I mean, this is a question we're going to have to grapple with. It's a great question for science fiction. It's been around for a long time. And we are going to have to deal with these issues. And I think that's what great sci-fi does. But again, it's a dicey question that I certainly am not qualified to answer. I can muse about these things, but I don't know. You know, it's probably not my place. There are people. It's beyond my pay grade to make these kinds of decisions. I will say that using science fiction, fantasy, and horror to explore these issues makes it easier to deal with. And that's what great science fiction always did, was it couched issues of the day in a science fiction context. So you can, Brian Eng just, he sent in another, an answer, or more, part 2 to this. Brian says, I just wrote you a long letter by my standards asking if the hentai Willow mentioned in her letter yesterday counts as child porn. Shortly after writing that letter, I found a Wikipedia article titled The Legal Status of Drawn Pornography Depicting Minors. In Japan, it is controversially legal. In the United States, it is borderline, but so borderline that most defendants choose to plea bargain for reduced sentences. I assume it is the same in Willow's Canada, so this is a warning to all the PGS. Do not possess lolicon, a.k.a. child hentai. Hate to see you go to jail for it. Wow, that's really interesting, Brian. I did not know if that's I did not know that that's the case. I mean, look, I am not as I said, I'm not a big fan of hentai, because again, it's all about the story for me, and to me, I find hentai to be honestly a little creepy. The Wandering Kid had some really interesting horror elements to it that I enjoyed, but it's a little, I don't know, little nutty. Let's see. Sam Whiskey sent in a super chat and says, what are your thoughts on Charlton Heston's Raiders of the Lost Ark? Is there one? I don't know about this. Charlton Heston's Raiders of the Lost Ark. Was this a deep fake thing? Let's see. I haven't seen it, but I shall. Heston's Raiders of the Lost Ark. There it is. Pops up. Don't know what it is. Let's check it out. Video of the day. Raiders of the Lost Archives compares Raiders of the Lost Ark. Okay. You're talking about, I don't know. I've never seen this movie. Secret of the Incas is a 1954 adventure film starring Charlton Heston as adventurer Harry Steele on the trail of an ancient Incan artifact. Shot on location at Machu Picchu in Peru, the film is often credited as the inspiration for Raiders of the Lost Ark. You know what? I can't believe I didn't know that. I've never seen it. I'll have to look it up. I mean, sounds good to me. I'll watch Charlton Heston. I didn't know that. I always thought Raiders of the Lost Ark was more of an homage to serials, but that doesn't mean that it isn't good. Have you seen it? I don't know. I haven't seen it. Mukbang sent in a super chat and says, pardon this interruption, but which pizza is best? It's a slugfest in the live chat. New York City versus Chicago. I'm New York City all the way. Chicago style is lasagna disguised as pizza, in my humble opinion. Well, again, like anything else, it really depends on what mood you're in. I love Chicago deep dish pizza. When I went there the first time, I went there in 1999 when Free Enterprise came out. Chicago is one of the cities that opened it, and I'd never been to Chicago before, and I had some incredible deep dish pizza with different kinds of crusts than I'd ever encountered before. But it was a different thing. It was not my experience of what pizza is. It was new to me though, but I loved it. Loved it. However, that is not to say that a thin slice of New York City pizza that has the perfect amount of cheese and crust and pepperoni or whatever, the simplicity of it, but the elegance at the same time. I think they're actually, when I think pizza, I think New York pizza. But when I think Chicago deep dish pizza, you have to say deep dish pizza. They're not the same thing for me. They're two different things. And while I love deep dish pizza, I have to be in the mood for it. Whereas I think a great New York pizza is I identify pizza more with New York style, if that makes any sense. I don't know if that answers the question. I don't know if that silences a debate, but I think they're two different things. And I'm in the mood for one or in the mood for the other. And they've opened a Gino's East pizza here in LA. And I know people from Chicago would say, oh, there's better pizza than Gino's East. And indeed, I probably had some better pizza the last time I was in Chicago, which was, God, almost, I guess it was 10 years. The last time I was in Chicago was 10 years ago. But I would love to go back. I was in Chicago for New Year's Eve, and man, did I have some good pizza. But I want to get to Gino's East. Mukbang Reviews sent in another super chat and said, the X-Men characters Forge, Angel, Havoc, and Dazzler haven't gotten the respect in the movies. Will it happen? If so, when? You know what? I should go back to here so you can see that. I agree with you. As an X-Men fan, look, as much as I like Angel, well, Angel is a big member of the X-Men, obviously, and so is Havoc. Actually, Forge. Forge to me was never he was never part of the core X-Men team. I know. I mean, his relationship with Storm, I get it, but I think those characters. First of all, Dazzler, little harder to deal with in the films. I think they might at some point. I think when Disney reboots the X-Men, however they're going to do it, you're going to see more of the pantheon of characters, so they don't have to rely on a core team. I think they're going to build up a lot more of the X-Men characters. That's what I would imagine. But I think you're right. I think they do have a lot of work to do, but I think it would be smart. The more X-Men characters that they can develop, I don't know how they're going to do it. I don't know if they're going to do a streaming show. I don't know if they're going to do a movie. I think they're probably going to do a movie because there's money to be had there. But I don't know how that would all work. But I would like to see those characters. Like, I've always liked Angel a lot. I mean, even when he becomes Archangel, when he becomes one of the Horsemen of Apocalypse, that was good stuff. I liked it. Happy Console Gamer sends in a super chat and says, hey, Robert, gotta ask, as I'm a big anime and video game fan, what is your favorite anime and your favorite video game of all time? Well, as many people know, my favorite anime of all time is Legends of the Galactic Heroes. I know a lot of people are going, wait, what? Legends of the Galactic Heroes was an OVA series that ran for a long time based on a series of 10 Japanese science fiction novels. Sentai Filmworks put out a beautiful box set. I own the Blu-rays and I have terrible, the dubs are terrible, but I've got the whole series. I've got DVD bootlegs from Hong Kong, and then I've got the Blu-rays, the domestic Blu-rays from here. By far, that is my favorite anime. And I know a lot of people haven't seen it. It's very dense. If you like, I like to say it's a cross between Lord of the Rings and World War II in space. It's amazing. It's an amazing, the original OVA series is 110 episodes. They've made actually movies as well. The third movie is terrible. Don't watch that. But it's a great series. It's my favorite. And then I'm old school. I mean, obviously, I really love Space Battleship Yamato, or as we might know it over here, Star Blazers. I think Star Blazers is great, and I love the remake, Star Blazers 2099, and of course, Star Blazers 2002. Love it. It's amazing. Those are, I love Gundam. I love, I love mostly 70s and 80s. That's how I got into it. Space Runaway Idiot. I love Dougram, all that stuff. Anything with mobile suits, of course, Macross. Love Macross. Genesis Climber, Mospeada, Southern Cross. I love all of this. I also love Japanese super robot shows from the 70s. I love Go Nagai stuff. I love like Getter Robo G and Getter Robo. I love Grandizer. I love Guy King. I love Ray Dean. I mean, I'm a huge fan of that kind of stuff. So I haven't watched a lot of what, like, Dragon Ball Z. I just don't know that stuff. Maybe because I was a little too old. There's other things like manga, like Area 88, which I have, that a lot of people don't remember. But Area 88 was a jet fighter manga that was turned into a movie. I liked Area 88 a lot. I love that story. It was about a pilot that gets basically kidnapped and conscripted into this like rebel air force in this for this African nation, and he can't get out until he's worked for a certain amount of time, stuff like that. Yeah. So, and my favorite video game of all time. Well, I've got some favorite video. Look, my favorite video game of all time is probably Defender and Stargate, but I know what you mean. I'm probably some of my favorite video games. I love the Uncharted franchise. I really loved Onimusha, and I really loved Devil May Cry, those Capcom games. I mean, I really did. And then of course I loved Grand Theft Auto, but I played Madden for years. But those are probably my favorite. But you know what? My favorite video game of all time, the game that most obsessed me when I played it, was Activision's remake of Battlezone from the late 90s. It was a first-person shooter mixed with real-time strategy, and I was obsessed with that game. I was obsessed with it. And basically the premise is that the space race never ended, and the Soviet Union and the Americans are fighting on different planets in our solar system. And it was amazing. You had to build your bases, and you had to mine ore for resources, and then you had a tank that you were in as a player, and you were not only controlling your resources being collected and building things and all that, you had to use your tank and go after the Russians that were also making things. And I loved it. I was obsessed with it. It kind of got me through the editorial process of Free Enterprise, because while I was editing Free Enterprise, I would play this game because my producer was also developing a sound system, a surround sound system for video games. So he had a demo of that game in the office. And I played it for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. That's probably my favorite video game of all time, I guess. I also really liked Ico and in the Shadow of Colossus. I was really happy when PlayStation put there was the PlayStation 2 version, but then they did new versions for PlayStation 3. I love those too. And of course, GoldenEye. GoldenEye was a great game, but I was never better at it. Steve Melching, he was the best. He could kill anybody in that game. But those are some. Mukbang Review sent in another super chat. Very generous of you, sir. Today's Prince song comes from Dirty Mind. It's called Annie Christian. Please read lyrics if they come to mind. No need to sing. You want me to read the lyrics of Annie Christian? I like Annie Christian a lot. But let me get all the lyrics. By the way, if you haven't heard the... Oh, wait. Boy, that's interesting. Yeah, it took me to a Facebook page, actually. Annie Christian. Yeah, it's not exactly the subtlest song. Annie Christian, Antichrist, until you're crucified, I'll live my life in taxi cabs. Annie Christian, Antichrist. See, I want to sing it. Annie Christian wanted to be number one, but her kingdom never comes. Thy will be done. She couldn't stand the glory. She would be second to none. The way Annie tells the story, she's his only son. Annie Christian wanted to be a big star, so she moved to Atlanta and she bought a blue car. She killed black children, and what's fair is fair. If you try and say you're crazy, everybody say electric chair. Yeah, it's a great song. Off Prince's fourth album, Dirty Mind. Yes. I like that that's today's Prince song. I will grant you that. I have, let's see, I have a letter here from Stephen Goggin. Stephen writes, Dear Rob and listeners, I recently looked at True Grit, both the classic Western produced by Hal Wallace. Wallace also produced Casablanca, Gunfight at the OK Corral, and lots of Elvis films, including King Creole, G.I. Blues, and Blue Hawaii. I've watched this film a few times, and I always enjoy it when I've watched it, and I love the theme song by Glenn Campbell. Glenn Campbell was the first American artist I saw live back in 1983 in a place called Cork City. I happened across the remake of True Grit, and for the most part was very much surprised that I enjoyed the remake most. And I discovered it was made by Skydance, who I believe are part of Bad Robot and Secret Hideout's crew. Well, Skydance, yes, they have worked a lot with Bad Robot, and they did finance the Kelvinverse movies. What I learned about the remake of True Grit was who else was involved, and that mainly the Coen brothers and Steven Spielberg were, which leaves me with a question. If Skydance is on the remake of True Grit, and oh my, they sure had big boots to fill, and they can get it right on this occasion, why have they not got it right for Star Trek and Star Wars? Well, Skydance has not been involved with Star Wars, to be fair. Thank you, as always, for taking the time to read my letters. Yours truly, Stephen G., the Irishman in Somerset. Please, I wonder what Hal Wallace would have thought of the OST episode of the original series episode, Spectre of the Gun, or indeed what DeForest Kelley would have thought finding himself in a remake of Gunfight at the OK Corral. I think he would have been tickled to death by it, frankly. Well, that's a good letter, Stephen. Yeah, it's always interesting to see when you see remakes. I love the Coen brothers remake of True Grit. I thought that Haley Stansfield and Jeff Bridges was great. Fill your hands, you son of a bitch. He was great as, come on. You're going to follow up the Duke? But I thought that Jeff Bridges was great. But yeah, it's always interesting to see where Skydance has been financing. They've almost been single-handedly financing most of Paramount's slate. They also are responsible for Altered Carbon. They've done a lot. They do the Mission Impossible movies and also Skydance is David Ellison, who is Larry Ellison, Oracle founder Larry Ellison's son. I was almost in business. I came this close to being in business with Skydance with our series Living in Infamy, but they decided at the very last minute after they had developed it for a year to pass on it, which was unfortunate because they should have made it. And I'm still trying to get that made, even now. So I want to thank you for writing in about that. I think, yes, that's always, it's always tricky when you remake things, but why can't it be as good? Why can't Star Trek be as good as True Grit? Well, I think the difference is you had the Coen brothers remaking True Grit. And look, J.J. Abrams has said repeatedly that he was never a Star Trek fan. And yet, why not? You're given a task to make a movie. It could be very, very lucrative in terms of merchandising rights. You take it. I get it. That's the way of the world. I cannot begrudge him for doing that. But what can you do? This next letter comes from Adam Blue. Uh-oh. Hey, Rob, so new story bits about Palpatine have come out of the Rise of Skywalker novelization. Regardless of what has happened to the franchise, I just wanted to quickly summarize what I found out in the novel because I think it works. When Palpatine was thrown down the Death Star 2 shaft, he was able to quickly transport his consciousness to a clone body on Exegol. Was he? The Sith refer to this as the God consciousness, but the clone body was imperfect. Palpatine recalls what he learned from Plagueis and even comments on how his former master may have figured this part out better than him. Also, Palpatine's son, who we learn about for the first time in The Rise of Skywalker, was a failed clone. Failed in that it didn't have the capacity to be a vessel for Palpatine, but could possibly continue the bloodline. These small details would have been great to somehow hear in the movie, but at least we now have canonized confirmation. Even if this sequel trilogy didn't do the series justice, this little bit of information is not at all offensive. Palpatine didn't have sexual relations with another in order to have a son. He was simply a failed clone, and along with that clone, Palpatine had others around as backups, like Snoke to do his bidding, or backups for Palpatine himself. But the main point here that keeps me content is that this explanation is similar to the experimentation Plagueis did in the Darth Plagueis novel, and it also keeps that novel to be mostly in line with the rest of canon, even though it is not recognized as canon. Though the questions I have are, how did Shmi Skywalker get pregnant? The Plagueis novel alludes to him and Palpatine making it happen, but nothing canon explains this, even though Vader comic has a vision of Palpatine hovering over Shmi's stomach. And where was Anakin born? He's only on Tatooine because Grandulla the Hutt lost him and his mom to Watto when the Hutt visited Tatooine for the pod races. Is that true? I don't know. Because with these questions answered, the naming of the last film being The Rise of Skywalker and having a Palpatine take the name kind of makes sense. Plagueis teaches Palpatine how to manipulate the Force. They make Anakin. Anakin fails Palpatine, so he creates other vessels to transfer his own essence. One of these leads to Rey, who takes the name Skywalker over Palpatine. So the Skywalker saga is about a Force-sensitive family created by Palpatine, who is then destroyed by his own bloodline, motivated by the Skywalkers trying to survive and live through their curse from birth. Anyway, hope the other imagination connoisseurs find that interesting if they were a little let down by what transpired on screen. Well, all of that I think could have been interesting, Adam, but you got to see that in the movies. See, here's as much as what I loved Star Wars and Empire when I saw them. And one of the great things about that was baked into Star Wars and Empire is that you knew that you were only seeing a tiny sliver of what was going on in that universe. There was a lot more going on. You knew the bounty hunter we ran into on Ord Mantell. Like, what was that? What bounty hunter? Ord Mantell? What the hell is that? Everybody wanted to know and see. We didn't see that, but we knew it happened. So you knew that there's a great big universe out there that you're not seeing. But one of the great things about Star Wars and Empire is everything that you needed to see about those stories, you saw them. There was never a point where you're going, well, you know, when he fell down the shaft and the explosion happened, he transferred his Force essence across the universe to Exegol into a clone body that was, wait, what? Like, I get it. I understand now if there's so much Star Wars continuity, but we need to see these things. In a movie, if they're going to bring Palpatine in as why didn't they do a flashback? Why didn't they start the movie with that actual scene from the end of Return of the Jedi when he gets thrown off the thing? And you actually saw his essence being transferred. You go to Exegol. You watch this occur. Why wouldn't you do that? I mean, now, Palpatine, the way the movie's made now, I know J.J. Abrams in his filmmaking just doesn't care, because this is a staple of the movies he makes. He just doesn't care. You know, he just says, okay, Palpatine's coming back. Well, no. That's a huge ask. And I think it's a big problem when there's no answer for that. And you're supposed to go, okay, you know, Palpatine, he's back. Well, no. How does that work? How does that work? The last time we saw Palpatine, he was being thrown off a gantry, being thrown from down into the pit of wherever, and he apparently explodes. I mean, this is a pretty definitive death. And if that wasn't enough, then the Death Star explodes. So, why not show that? Why not show that? They showed, hey, go back to Return of the King. How does Return of the King open? It opens with the origin of Smeagol. You see Smeagol kill Deagle. You see him find the ring. You see him take the ring away. You see all of that, so you get where Smeagol comes from. Why wouldn't they take a page out of that movie and be like, you know what? If we're going to bring the Emperor Palpatine back, and he's going to be the big bad of this movie, and the last time we saw him, he's dead, perhaps we should take a moment and figure out how he got there. Let's tell our audience how he got there. I think that's pretty important. I mean, it's really important to deal with. And I think that part of the reason that movie didn't really work for me, even though there's things in it I kind of liked, but it doesn't hold together as a story, because the whole time I'm asking myself, one, how did Palpatine get resurrected? How is he back? Two, how are there this many Star Destroyers? And what is he waiting for? Why hasn't he taken over the galaxy again? I don't know. I mean, there's so much, and all of this is not in the movie. It need to be in the movie. These are easy fixes. This is how movie making works. And apparently people have forgotten this, and I hate it. I hate it. But I understand, like, you read the book and go, okay, you know, because your novelist, was that written by Alan Dean Foster? Did he write that? Who wrote the novel of that? I don't know, to be honest. Let me see. Who wrote the novelization of The Rise of Skywalker? Expanded edition. Let's see. It was written by Ray Carson. Okay, Ray Carson. What has Ray Carson written? Where does she come from? Ray Carson has written, she's written other Star Wars books. The Girl of Fire and Thorns. I mean, I'm sure Ray Carson was trying to figure out how to make all of this ridiculousness work. She's written some pretty interesting, like a whole series of books, it looks like. The Girl of Fire and Thorns stories. Wow, okay. The Shattered Mountain. The Girl of Fire and Thorns is part of the... Well, she's written a lot of these books, so she's practiced at world building. So she probably got this. Oh, she wrote a book about Canto Bight. Okay. So she's no stranger to Star Wars. She's probably like, well, how the hell did this happen? And it fell on her. She had to explain it in her own mind, because how is she going to tell the story? But hey, and her Bitter Kingdom, the Girl of Fire and Thorns books are getting good reviews. So I hope, I guess it's canon, I suppose. Makes me wonder. You never know. But I don't want to, to me, I'm like, a movie's got to work as a movie. I love novelizations, and I've always loved fill in the blanks for me. Vonda McIntyre's novelizations for Star Trek 2 and 3 are great. I love all those, but still the movie has to stand alone. And if I'm asking myself as an astute viewer, how did Palpatine get back? The movie fails, because the movie has posed a question that I am waiting to be answered for my sense of verisimilitude and belief. I want to believe. I'm like Fox Mulder. Make me believe. And when I get to see that, very, very, very disappointing. Anyway. This next letter, I like this next letter, comes from Luke Gosling. Does entertainment value give story problems a pass? Hi, Rob and the Post-Geek Singularity. Long-time watcher, second-time writer. I've never been a huge Star Trek guy, but I've seen odd episodes of some films throughout the years, enjoying some more than others. Saying that, I enjoy listening to your thoughts, frustrations, and breakdowns on what works and doesn't in the long-running franchise. This got me thinking about what works for some fans and not others. Why do we give some films a pass and tear others to strips? A lot of films, especially modern blockbusters, are riddled with story issues, inconsistencies, and convenient plotting. As an independent writer and filmmaker, it boggles the mind how these things aren't stamped out in the script phase, even with all the money and resources. I drive myself mad trying to make my stories work. Do these filmmakers just not really care? But having said that, why do I, like many others, let it slide in some instances but not others? The MCU is chock full of these things, e.g. Black Widow's facial disguise tech used in Winter Soldier. If they have this tech, why not use it all the time? It sure would make sneaking up on Thanos and cutting his head off from behind a lot easier if one of the good guys was disguised as the bad guy. Do the filmmakers just hope we'll forget about these things? It's a damn entertaining franchise, so I overlook it. Mostly. As in they mostly come out at night. A Quiet Place doesn't even stick to its central conceit of monsters attacking noise. It turns out they only attack noise that is convenient to the story. The whole world makes noise, so why aren't the monsters running around constantly pissed off with a headache like the stag do hangover? A great high concept that makes no sense. So again, are the filmmakers hoping we won't notice? This realization took me out of the film within 2 minutes of watching it, but I was eventually brought back around because it was so well executed. There are many examples of when I'm out. But we'll just use Star Trek to finish this point. I don't have the history with the show, but I enjoyed Star Trek 09 as I found it entertaining. However, I gave up on Picard after 4 episodes as I found it simply dull. Both have flaws to me, so why in some instances do we give story problems a pass? Is it down to something as simple as entertainment value? Just look to the Fast franchise. I hope this stimulates your thoughts. Keep up the logical and entertaining discussion. All the best. Luke Gosling from cold and windy Lincoln across the pond. Well, Luke, what a great letter. One of my favorite subjects to discuss. As the Viceroy of Verisimilitude, I ponder this all the time. Even as a film editor, on things, I'm constantly striving for realism. And as I've used as an example, if you, for instance, are dealing with time and people walking around in rooms, whenever you're editing from shot to shot, you have to take into consideration how far people move in any given frame, like what they're doing. Could they get there? Can you jump cut it and make it work? Internal logic of a story is one of my big sticking points. And yes, I've often said to people that you only get 1 or 2 asks in a movie. That means fantasy conceits or something that you're going to believe in. For instance, in the Age of Adeline that I was talking about, a lightning strike causes Adeline to stop aging. She stops aging. I don't need to know the mechanisms of why that works. I believe that lightning striking the ground, a natural force of some kind, and this is my own way I'm thinking. Lightning strikes the ground, and some freak accident happens that has some kind of electrochemical response in Adeline's body where she stops aging. I am willing to strain credulity, not to the breaking point, but I will believe in that. You get that ask, I will believe in that. Now, is that outlandish? Sure. Has it ever happened before? No. Probably could never happen. But in the context of that movie, and you need to get her to a position where she's no longer going to age, that's as good as conceit as any. It's part of the natural world. There are things about the natural world we don't understand, so I'll buy into that. I don't sit there and get stuck on that concept. That is an ask, and the movie, the way it's set up, the way it's told, I believe in it because it also has sort of a fairy tale quality, and I'm willing to go with it. They've used conceits, and the way they're telling the story with a voiceover narrator and all that, I'm buying it. You've made me believe. Now, I think one of my problems with J.J. Abrams as a filmmaker, and it's evidenced in every one of his science fiction movies especially, Star Trek, Star Wars, Super 8. He's made 2 Star Trek movies, 2 Star Wars movies, and Super 8. He glosses over a lot of things that he doesn't feel is necessary to deal with. He just doesn't care. He doesn't care. And I know this because he's repeatedly done this throughout his movies. My favorite example, I think, from Star Trek 09 is Vulcan. Set your clocks, ladies and gentlemen. Take your stopwatches out and think about this. In Star Trek 09, we are at a disciplinary hearing. Spock and Kirk are testifying at a disciplinary hearing because Kirk has been an idiot and cheated on the Kobayashi Maru test in the most ham-fisted, ridiculous way possible. How they ruined the Kobayashi Maru, I'll never know, but that's not what bothers me. So they're at a disciplinary hearing. All of Starfleet Academy is there, and Tyler Perry, who's presiding over the proceedings because he runs Starfleet Academy, he's there, and they find out during this time that Vulcan is under attack by Nero's ship. Vulcan is under attack. Let's start our stopwatches. Now here's what happens. You're cadets and you are at Starfleet Academy. You're undergoing, you're witnessing a disciplinary hearing, and you find out that the planet Vulcan is under attack. Okay, how far away is Earth from Vulcan? Even at high warp, how long would it take to get there? Think about that. In the movie Star Trek 09, we see that this disciplinary hearing is broken up. Then everybody goes to a staging area when they're sent over to shuttlecrafts, and they're assigned to starships. So they go to the staging area, they get onto shuttlecrafts, and the shuttlecrafts fly up to their ships, which they've never been on before. How long does that take? How long does it take for students to leave a disciplinary hearing, find out that they're going to be immediately assigned to starships? How long does it take to figure out that, where people are going to go? Then they go to a staging area. They have to walk or presumably are transported en masse to a place, and they have to figure out which shuttle they're getting onto. Then that shuttle goes from San Francisco, goes into orbit, lands at whatever various starship it's supposed to be at. Then everybody gets off these starships, and they're assigned to their cabins. They have to figure out where they're going to go. Now, keep in mind, is the battle how long does a battle last? How long did Nero's ship take to unfurl its drill to start drilling into the planet's surface? And then, of course, these ships, they get to Vulcan, and then there's another battle where Nero's ship took out a bunch of Starfleet ships. I don't believe that this happened in a half an hour, or even an hour, or even 2 hours, or even in a day. But in the movie it does, because they've written a scenario where they just need to go from a hearing at Starfleet Academy. They need to get all of our crew into Vulcan's orbit to try and take out Nero's drill and then watch Vulcan be destroyed. I don't believe that. As soon as that happens, I'm like, that could never happen in that amount of time. Nero would be gone. And I know a lot of people will be like, "Oh no, I could believe it." I can't. I can't believe that all he just needed a quick way to get somebody from one place to another. The beaming, when they beam from Delta Vega onto the Enterprise, a ship that's traveling at warp. We need to get Kirk and Scotty back onto the Enterprise. So, we'll just violate all of the 40 plus years of how the transporter works, and we'll just figure out a way that Scotty just can magically make up technology where you can beam onto a starship moving at warp from a planet that is how far away? And what you've done is in terms of expediency, J.J. Abrams has just thrown out all the lore, and he's made the transporter a magical device. He does that all the time. He does not care. It does not make any difference for him. And when he does things like that, it destroys all verisimilitude because, as we all know, even things like the transporter are governed by rules. And I know people always throw something at me going, well, Rob, what about this one time? No, for the most part, the transporter was used pretty consistently throughout Star Trek. Yes, there were changes, like people could apparently move, or you could see things like in Realm of Fear, which was stupid. But you could see things when you're being beamed. Okay, I get it. But for the most part, you have to have rules that define these things. And J.J. Abrams is completely unconcerned with this. How did Palpatine come back from the dead? How could he come back from being defeated the way he was defeated in Return of the Jedi? He doesn't fucking care. He doesn't care. And so we get Rise of Skywalker, where the main question of any astute viewer is, how the fuck did Palpatine come back to life? Where did these spaceships come from? I mean, and this is the problem. You are asking yourself a question because there is a universe that you have believed in since 1977. And for me, J.J. Abrams just willy-nilly threw a bunch of stuff out there, and you're expected to believe Ray, how does she know how to fly the Millennium Falcon? How does she have all these force powers? He doesn't care. And in not caring, what you are doing is you're undermining the reality of the entire universe that you've built. And astute viewers, it feels, look, to me, we talk about gaslighting. It defines what gaslighting is to me. It's like, why? I don't need to tell you. You know, I'm going to lie or do whatever, no, it's whatever. Maybe it doesn't define gaslighting, but it's frustrating. It's frustrating because as students of these franchises, the lore is part of the fun, the lore of the universe. Suddenly, she's got force healing powers. She can heal an alien snake. How does she know an alien snake's physiology? I guess she doesn't have to. The force just knows. I mean, I hate that. How are you supposed to deal with anything if magic is possible? If magic is possible, then why watch a story? I mean, it's very upsetting. So can entertainment value overcome that? That was your initial premise. For me, it can't. For me, when my entertainment value comes from watching a really compelling, interesting story that takes all of that into consideration. That's what world building is. That's what the great sci-fi writers do, is they ask themselves these questions and answer them in the material. That's why they become interesting. That's why we love them. Look at Harry Potter. Harry Potter has all kinds of lore. If you were to ask people, how do you get to be a Hufflepuff? How do you get to be in Gryffindor? Like, how does that happen? People know. When you're going to put your hand in a hat, ask a question or whatever. All of this lore is part of Harry Potter's history. And if you were to violate all of that, the kids that grew up reading the books and the adults that have seen all the movies and all of us, anybody who likes Harry Potter is going to go, wait a minute, you can't do that because in this thing over here, this is how you can't violate Harry Potter lore, and everybody would know it. J.K. Rowling would never allow it. Luckily, J.K. Rowling, she looks over this stuff, and I know she's probably violated her own lore at some point, but still, she's trying to be protective of it because that's what's fun. That's why we like Harry Potter. Otherwise, who cares? And I think one of the things that really I can't stand about Star Trek is when you know that the creators of Star Trek don't care about the lore or the universe, or they think they can just go in and take beloved characters that have been around for a long time and change them. I understand Critical Drinker does a great job of laying this out today in his review of The Timeless Children. watch it. It's very simple. And I feel like if you want to do that, great, but you have to, if you're going to go change the lore, you got to do it well. You know, The Rise of Skywalker, you just watch this, and any astute viewer, look, you want to turn your brain off and be like, okay, I can enjoy it for what it is. I can't. I'm looking at it, I'm going, wait a minute. The fundamental question of this movie is, how did Palpatine come back? How did he come back? They don't answer that question. If they don't answer that question, I'm like, I can't believe in your story, no matter what else is going on. Why has this ship been sitting in the desert for 20 years and no one's gone in it? It's sitting on top of a hill, which is in walking distance or speeder distance from this partying town. Like they go in, no one went in there before? That ship worked. No one flew it away? Well, that guy didn't come back for 20 years. I mean, I don't believe half of that shit in that movie. And that's why I don't like J.J. Abrams as a filmmaker, because he thinks I'm stupid. He thinks those things don't matter. But they do. They do matter. At least I've always thought that they mattered. 200-Watt Studio answers me and says, JJ's flash over substance. He doesn't comprehend substance. I agree. It's like he's like I don't know. He goes to the county fair and all he eats is the cotton candy. He doesn't go into the animals petting zoo, and he doesn't go to the 4-H agriculture show or whatever. He just wants to eat cotton candy and scones and ride the roller coaster. I mean, that's fine, but that's not all a country fair is. People don't just go to the country fair. I don't even know where I came up with this analogy. It doesn't work for me. But anyway, you know what I mean. Mika Eno sent in a super chat and says, space in JJ's films is absurdly small. Every planet is right next to each other. Any events happening in the universe can be seen from any planet. I know. I mean, Starkiller Base. It's like Starkiller Base will fire its primary weapon, which apparently turns. A beam weapon turns after it travels through hyperspace, and then you can see those planets getting destroyed. How long would a beam weapon take to go how far? It's a hyperspace weapon. How does a beam weapon travel through hyperspace? J.J. Abrams' understanding of hyperspace and how long it takes is he in all of these movies, whether it's Star Trek 09 or Into Darkness, whether it's in Force Awakens or whether it's in Rise of Skywalker. Right? It's just, you watch this stuff and it's maddening. It's maddening, and I hate it. I don't like it at all. So, yes, not cool. Not cool. And I don't think anybody cares as much as about these things. I mean, actually, no, people do. People care, but maybe not as much as we do. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, what are you going to do? 200-Watt Studio also sends in a chat and says, Rey is a Palpatine. How did she know how to fly the Falcon? Will we get a novel that tells the tale of a young Palpy smuggling spice in a freighter? Well, they've explained that. You know, inside her tipped over AT-AT that she lives in, there's computer simulations that have allowed her to learn to fly. So lame. What's lame is that people in either the visual dictionaries or novelizations or whatever are left to try and clean up all of this lazy, messy storytelling. And it's annoying. Jedi and friend to Alita sends in a tip and says, I get your points about JJ, and I mostly agree, but Rian Johnson is just as bad. He just admitted he didn't care about canon or the established world, which is evident by things like hyperspace ramming, which completely negates space battles in all of the films. You know, people have said that, and I don't necessarily agree with that. What happened, and admittedly it's a great visual moment. You know, ramming could happen. I mean, people have said, well, you could make hyperspace torpedoes that could be used to take something out. I think that, like, you can always ram somebody. You can today. One ship could ram another ship, but they don't. I mean, they'd have to defend against ramming, but they don't, because you've got a bunch of people like giving up your own life it's a last ditch effort. People don't want to be dying. I don't think that's something that's the norm. And I don't necessarily think you have to have ships like that are going to go to hyperspace. I just don't see that as being a tactic that's going to be used all the time. People always said, well, how does that negate space battles? Look, there was always naval combat. One naval ship could ram another naval ship on the high seas, whether it was like the Constitution or pick your sailing vessel, Captain Aubrey, whatever. You could always, but nobody's going to do that. Nobody's going to sacrifice their ship, or nobody's going to sacrifice their lives. I mean, you could. It'd be a last-ditch attempt. And I think that with hyperspace, I don't necessarily think you could make, say, hyperspace weapons necessarily that could be deployed that way. Maybe you could. I don't know. But that was a last-ditch effort. I don't think that ships ramming each other. I mean, we saw a great example of another ship, the Stingray. Is it the Stingray? What is it called? That rams that pushes this one Star Destroyer into another in the Battle of Scarif. I love that. I thought that was cool. That's not something that happens all the time. But the Carillion, is it the Carillion Hammerhead? What is that? But yeah. Anyway. It's just frustrating. Frustrating. Well, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that brings me to a conclusion of this Robservations episode number 355. 355. Robservations 355. My God, has it been that long? I want to thank you all for being here, joining me on a Sunday, celebrating the 42nd anniversary of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Life, the Universe, and Everything. I cannot recommend the radio series highly enough. You can get CDs of it. You can probably listen to it online somewhere, I bet. Does the humor still work? I don't know. One of my favorite things ever. I want to thank everybody for supporting the channel via Super Chats, buying merch, whatever, however you want to, and sending me letters. It's a great way. It costs nothing. Send me letters. I'll read them on the air if they're good. I have to say that your letter writing game has been, you've stepped that up. A lot of great letters coming in. I really appreciate how thoughtful all the letters are. I think it's amazing. And I want to say, if you like these chats, please hit like. Please subscribe. We're closing in on 25,000 subscribers, which to me is amazing. Thank you for that. I'm not like Davey504. I don't have 6 million subs, and I didn't eat pineapple pizza or take my headphones off. But for me, 25,000 subscribers is amazing. I want to thanks to all of you. A lot of new listeners here are finding me because of various reasons. I want to welcome you all here. If you have ways you want me to make these chats better, please throw them my way. I'm not beyond criticism. Or if you hate my guts, you can write me and tell me that too. I love all of you members of the Post-Geek Singularity community, all of you imagination connoisseurs. I think personally that we have the greatest community on YouTube, and part of that is because of our great moderating staff, beginning with Mayor Mike Bodden of Riverdale, Iowa, who makes sure I get the letters. Of course, Detective Jim Boyers, who knows if you've been bad or good. I like to think of him as the Secret Santa, or no, he's in charge of surveillance here at the Burnettwork. And then, of course, there's Greg Smith, who was building a 1-to-1 scale snowspeeder for the Emerald City Comic Con, but it was postponed. Maybe he can still be doing that, but the pressure is off, Greg, so that's good. And then, of course, there's Jordy Lyons and Lewis Yu. Jordy Lyons and Lewis Yu are my newest moderators, but certainly not the least of the moderators. They do a great job, and everybody always tells me how great the moderating staff here is. One day I should just have somebody else host this show so I can hang out in the live chat under a pseudonym and stir up shit and see how long I take to get banned by my own moderators. That would be kind of fun. But anyway, I want to thank you all for being here. And remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. All you have to do is listen. I will be back on the John Campea show tomorrow. And I will also be back here probably at 1 in the afternoon. So please come back. Please subscribe. Please like. And again, if you have anything to tell me, please tell me. Please write me a letter at theburnettwork.net. Send me videos if you want. I think I've got some videos that I need to play. But you can send me videos. You can send me any videos you want. I have to, obviously there can't be copyrighted music in them. But if you want to send me videos, our man Roberto Suarez sent me a really interesting video not too long ago. I will play them on the air. Even if you just want to say hello. Send me a phone video and show me your local theater, whatever. I will play it on the air. And with that, I say to all of you, on this Sunday, Robservations episode number 355 is now over. And I say to all of you, have a better day.